Yes, you remember Dame Jacinda Ardern. She was given a damehood for her stint as the Globe's headmistress of COVID tyranny. Her zealous zero-COVID scheme kept New Zealand shackled in a merciless lockdown for over 2 long years, with the jab practically hammered into the veins of teachers, police and healthcare warriors. Her autocratic whims included slamming the door on overseas Kiwis yearning to get back home and enforcing some of the strictest lockdowns the world knew. Her resignation came with a tired sigh of being burnt out. Burnt out? Well, it sounds more like a timely exit before an inevitable booting out. Sweet Jacinda Ardern serenaded China. She was jeopardising the vital Five Eyes intelligence alliance, and meanwhile she misplaced her vocal cords when it came to Uyghurs languishing in Chinese concentration camps. Perhaps too busy buffing her halo to concern herself with minor issues like alleged genocide of Muslims. Now, the circus didn't end with Jacinda Ardern's departure. Once her jester-like grin left the stage, her comrades mooted the world's first tax on the burps and toots of livestock. That was set for 2026. Now, of course, that's a tough nugget for New Zealand farmers, much like the Dutch farmers that we've seen in an act of open rebellion. Given their stellar greenhouse gas emission efficiency, though she soared with a landslide in 2020, the winds changed as Kiwis grew weary of the hot air from Labour politicos. They've now warmly welcomed a new Conservative to the helm, bidding a hearty farewell to St Jacinda, tucked away in the history next to the draconian lockdowns which the High Court in New Zealand later branded as unjustifiable in a thriving democracy. So had we bid adieu to one of the Jacinda and the era of Jacinda's politics, I can only hope, folks, and I mean this with my hand on my heart, that the Kiwis have learnt the costly lesson of trade and liberty for a mirage of left-wing safetyism. Well, I assume, Benjamin Butterworth, that you thought she was the best thing since sliced bread.
I mean, you say hand on your heart. I didn't know you had one based on what we
here we go.
The truth is that you're just bitter and envious because Jacinda Ardern won elections overwhelmingly. She was incredibly popular in New Zealand, and New Zealand managed to have a number of deaths from COVID that was lower than the great majority of Western countries. She did a fantastic job. She was hugely popular. And what I think was so remarkable, and actually, can I just say, the fact that New Zealand Labour lost that election in, the last 24 hours with their subsequent leader shows how successful she was, because when she left, the Labour Party lost.
Come off it.
She
left early to avoid humiliation.
What I find so impressive about Jacinda Ardern is that sometimes it's obviously there are so many barriers to women getting into jobs like running countries, right? There's still been far too few. And some of them tend to adopt the character traits of men. They tend to be very aggressive. And what Jacinda Ardern did, in a similar way to Hillary Clinton, who's my political role model, is that she led with kindness.
Oh, here we go.
So I'm not taking this sexist
Emily, I mean, do you think
sexist
Jacinda's...
male characteristics of aggression, but she just stuck to being kind. We don't want kind politicians. We want politicians who are logical and who are able to make arguments and are able to see through their policies. She was an absolute failure. She locked people up and didn't allow people to have their relatives come see them or to be able to go see their relatives. Just because you enjoyed being locked up in your bedroom for 2 years, other people didn't.
I mean, in
fairness, it was appalling the way that she treated people. And she has the most authoritarian nanny state policies across the board anyway. And the way that she was loved up by, international liberal lefty leaders was vomitorious.
Yes, and I'm not sure actually dismissing half of your population as deplorables is an especially nice thing to do, but you've got a very warped interpretation of that word. Clearly, Albie, you were going to say something.
Yes, I was going to say, in fairness to Emily, about the authoritarian measures that Jacinda Ardern took in New Zealand. I remember at the beginning of lockdown looking on at New Zealand in envy because they were all able to go out because of their COVID policy whilst we were all locked up at home. So there were some measures which worked quite well for Jacinda Ardern. There were others which I disagreed with. But I do actually agree with the point that Benjamin made, that it is very difficult for politicians, whether they are Conservative politicians or liberal left-wing politicians, female politicians, to get into politics. I was talking to Alicia Kearns at the Conservative Party conference last week, and we had a whole discussion.
A Tory
about how it's
MP, she's a Conservative MP.
I'm sorry, but there are candidates lists that are only for women, selection processes. It's hard once you're in politics, I'd say, but I think all of the parties are desperate to have women, so if you're half decent, you'll get one.
Well, Emily, if you actually listen to what Alicia had to say, a female MP who has gone through the process of becoming a Conservative MP, she was talking about how it's difficult because a lot of women still have the childcare burden, so they can't go to these AGMs and these political meetings that they need to go to in order to get selected.
That's the same in any job.
No, but
that's just having children.
But Emily, the point is, this is what Alicia Kearns, a female Conservative MP, has said, and it is more difficult for women to get into politics. We see that at the moment because the candidates list which have been selected for the Conservative Party, I think most of them are men.
Alex Armstrong, I wonder if you think that actually we've got a lesson to be learned here in Britain, that electing someone like Jacinda Ardern, maybe in a suit as opposed to a frock, isn't going to end well for Britain, is it?
No, I mean, look, I don't think your performance as a leader is determined by your sex anyway, and I agree with Emily wholeheartedly. All women shortlist also a total disaster. You want the best person for the job, not just the best person of that sex, of that category for the job. Where does it end?
What a ridiculous...
What I will say is, actually, just moving on slightly.
Why is Alicia the gospel?
She is the Alicia, yes. Well, let's listen to Alicia. But I have to say, I am rejoicing today. It's a double win in Oceania with the no vote in Australia and the booting out of those zero COVID policy nut jobs in New Zealand. It's fantastic.
This nonsense that you talk, it's the same people that say they hate Nicola Sturgeon or Tony Blair. They beat you. You and your crazy right-wing policies lost over and over.
Not today they didn't, though, Benjamin. Not today.
Most New Zealanders, like Jacinda Ardern, and most Britons...
Well, they didn't. That's why she ran away from the election, didn't she?
Tony Blair than your little friend Margaret Thatcher.
Her polling ratings took a nosedive. That's why she quit. Not because she was burnt out. I mean, that might be part of it.
She won 2 elections out of nowhere.
May I just say on the women point, because obviously I am a woman and I care about women, and they do face huge amounts of misogyny in all types of working places, not least on social media when you're a politician and you put yourself out there. I should know. But I don't think that we should portray women as these kind of weaklings, or as if they always make the same kind of leaders.
That's not what I'm doing. I'm saying from the female MPs that I have spoken to, they all highlight the same problems of women going into politics. And perhaps if you spoke to some of them, you would understand where they're coming from.
Don't patronise me.